Kids, we play saying something that most people are afraid to admit out loud. There are men in this world walking alone. There are men in this world walking alone. No circle, no calls, no let's hang out, no one checking if they're okay. Just silence and the sound of their own thoughts. And today I want to talk about a man with no friends, not because he's weak, but because life shaped him that way. Because somewhere along the journey, he learned something the hard way. Not everybody who smiles at you is for you. You see, people think having no friends is a sad story. They imagine loneliness, emptiness, and a life with no meaning. But what if I told you sometimes it's not a tragedy. Sometimes it's a transformation. A man with no friends has had to sit with himself. No distractions, NIs, Ys, Wate. No distractions, no noise, no fake conversations, just to pass time. Just him and the truth. And that's a dangerous place to be, because that's where real growth begins. That's where real growth begins. That's where you face your fears, your failures. Sometimes you at Pais say, wow, stop running and start understanding who you really are. See, when you have a crowd around you, it's easy to hide. You laugh when they laugh. You agree when they agree. You become who they expect you to be. But when you're alone, there's no one to impress. There's no one to perform for. There's just you. And for a lot of men, that's the moment everything changes. A man with no friends starts asking himself real questions. What am I doing with my life? Why am I not where I want to be? What do I actually stand for? And those questions, they don't come with easy answers. They don't come with easy answers. They come with sleepless nights. They come with doubt. They come with moments where you feel like you're falling apart. But let me tell you something. That's not you breaking. That's not you breaking. That's you rebuilding. Because sometimes life removes people from your life, not to punish you, but to prepare you, to protect your energy, to clear your path, to show you that you don't need a crowd to become kind. A man with no friends learns independence. He learns how to move without validation. He learns how to make decisions without needing approval. He learns how to stand alone without feeling alone. And that's power, because when you depend on people for your happiness, you give them control over your life. But when you learn to stand on your own 2 feet, nobody can shake you. Now, don't get me wrong. We are not meant to live completely disconnected. You ask it. Sambes 110's word just it's a filter. It's life removing the noise so you can finally hear your purpose. A man with no friends starts focusing differently. He puts his energy into his goals. He invests in himself. He starts building something not for stick. You ask you repaite stacks, what for fulfillment? Because when nobody's watching, that's when the real work gets done. And let me tell you something powerful. When you build yourself in silence, the results will make noise. You won't have to chase people. You won't have to chase people. You won't have to beg for attention. The right people will find you. They'll recognize your growth. They'll respect your journey. And they'll come into your life not to distract you, but to elevate you. And they'll come into your life not to distract you, but to elevate you. But before that happens, you have to go through the phase where it's just you. And that phase, it's not easy, and that phase, it's not easy. There will be days you question everything. Days you feel invisible. Days you feel invisible. Days you wonder if something is wrong with you. But hear me clearly, there is nothing wrong with you. You are just in a season of becoming. A season where life is teaching you how to be strong without support, how to be focused without distractions, how to be confident without validation. And when you come out of that season, you won't just be another man in the crowd. Yo, kanyat, You ain't no asked to fill that space with just anybody. Don't lower your standards just to avoid loneliness. Use this time. Grow, learn, build. Understand yourself on a deeper level. Because the man who can stand alone can stand anywhere. And when the right people finally come into your life, you won't need them to complete you. You won't need them to complete you. You'll welcome them to compliment you. That's the difference. And that's the power. There comes a moment in a man's life when the noise fades. No messages lighting up his phone. No voices calling his name. No distractions to keep his mind busy. Just silence. And in that silence, something uncomfortable starts to rise. Himself. Not the version he shows the world. Not the one shaped by expectations, opinions, or the need to fit in. But the real one. The one he's been avoiding. Because when? And sometimes you ask. You're surrounded by people. It's easy to forget who you are. You blend in. You adapt. You wear masks without even realizing it. You laugh at things that don't even make you laugh. You agree with things you don't even believe in. You become what the room needs you to be. And after a while, you lose yourself in that performance. But when it's just you, there's no audience, no applause, no approval. And suddenly you don't know what to do with that. You sit there and the questions start coming. Who am I without all these people? What do I really want? What do I actually believe in? And those questions don't whisper, they echo. And those questions don't whisper, they echo. They hit you in places you didn't even know were empty. Because the truth is, most men don't spend enough time with themselves to know themselves. To know themselves, they stay busy. They stay surrounded. They stay distracted. They stay surrounded. They stay distracted. Not because they're happy, but because they're scared of what they might find in the quiet. Because in the quiet, there are no lies. Because in the quiet, there are no lies. You can't pretend. Kad, buh. Chinese what they say, tell you're okay when you're not. You can't fake confidence when doubt is staring you in the face. You can't hide your insecurities behind jokes or conversations. It's just you, paite. It's just you and everything you've been running from. And that's where it gets heavy. That's where you start realizing things you didn't want to admit. Maybe you've been chasing the wrong things. Maybe you've been chasing the wrong things. Maybe you've been trying to impress the wrong people. Maybe you've been living a life that doesn't even feel like yours. And that realization, it hurts. And that realization, it hurts. It shakes you. It makes you question every decision, every relationship, every version of yourself you've been holding on to. But that pain, it's honest. Time you win, sometime you find in a crowd. It's something you discover in solitude. It's built in those quiet moments where you're forced to face yourself without filters, where you sit with your thoughts and you don't run, where you feel the discomfort and you don't escape, where you look at God. My Chinese what they stay pot. At the same time, it gives you something powerful, clarity. You can't unsee it. Say, because once you see yourself clearly, you can't unsee it. You start noticing your patterns, the habits that are holding you back, the mindset that's keeping you stuck, the fears that have been quietly controlling your decisions. And slowly, something begins to shift. You stop pretending. You stop chasing validation. You stop trying to be accepted by people who don't even understand you. You start asking better questions. What do I need to change? What kind of man do I want to become? What am I willing to let go of to get there? And those questions, they start shaping you. Not overnight, not easily, but deeply, because real. Sometimes you wet. Time identity isn't built in comfort. It's built in those moments where you feel lost, but you choose to keep searching. Where you feel unsure, but you choose to keep going. Where you feel alone, but you don't abandon yourself. And that's the difference. A man who avoids solitude stays confused, but a man who embraces it starts to understand, starts to grow, starts to become someone real. Not perfect, not finished, but real. And there's something powerful about that. Because once you know who you are, you stop settling. You stop shrinking. You stop allowing people to define your worth. You move differently. You think differently. You carry yourself differently. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Some people are afraid of being alone, but they should be more afraid of being alone. But they should be more afraid of being surrounded by the wrong people. Because loneliness, it hurts, yeah. But the wrong company, that destroys you slowly, quietly, without you even realizing it. See, not every smile is genuine. Not every smile is genuine. Not every So we hold on to people even when something feels off, even when deep down we know they're not right for us. We ignore the signs. We ignore the feeling in our gut because we don't want to be alone. In our gut because we don't want to be alone. But let me tell you something. Keeping the wrong people in your life just to avoid loneliness is one of the most expensive mistakes a man can make, because the wrong people don't just waste your time. They drain your energy. They pull you away from your purpose. They make you question yourself in ways you never did before. You start second-guessing your decisions. You start lowering your standards. You start becoming someone you don't even recognize. And the worst part, it doesn't happen all at once. It happens little by little, conversation by conversation, choice. Asku ripai choice. Until one day you wake up and you feel lost. Not because you don't have people around you, but because you don't have people around you, but because you've been around the wrong people for too long. People who don't challenge you. People who don't support your growth. People who laugh with you, but secretly don't want to see you win. People who only show up when it benefits them and disappear when you need them the most. That kind of company, it's dangerous because it creates an illusion that you're not alone. But in reality, you are, because being surrounded by people who don't truly understand you is one of the loneliest feelings in the world. You can be in a room full of people and still feel empty in the world. You can be in a room full of people and still feel empty. I still feel disconnected, still feel like nobody really sees you. And that kind of loneliness hits deeper than silence ever could. At least when you're alone, it's honest. Ever could. At least when you're alone, it's honest. But when you're with the wrong people, it's fake. And fake energy, it weighs on you. It affects your mindset, your confidence, your Chinese what they da. You start picking up their habits, their negativity, their limitations. You start thinking like them, acting like them, settling like them, acting like them, settling like them. Without even realizing it, you begin to shrink, to fit into a space that was never meant for you. And every time you ignore that feeling, you lose a piece of yourself. That voice inside you that says, this isn't right, it gets quieter until one day you can't even hear it anymore. That's what the wrong people do. They don't just take your time. They don't just take your time. They take your clarity, your direction, your identity. And the scary part is they don't have to force it. They don't have to force it. You give it to them by staying, by tolerating, by choosing comfort over truth. But there comes a moment where you have to be real with yourself, where you have to look around and ask, are these people helping me grow or keeping me stuck? Do they bring peace into my life or confusion? Do I feel stronger around them or smaller? And those questions, they're not easy to answer because are the ones you've known the longest, X. Sometimes the people holding you back are the ones you've known the longest, the ones you shared memories with, the ones you thought would always be there. But time doesn't make a connection right. History doesn't make it healthy. And just because someone has been in your life for years doesn't mean they deserve a place in your future. That's a hard decision. Walking away from people you care about, choosing distance over familiarity, choosing growth over comfort. But sometimes that's exactly what you need, because protecting your peace is not selfish. Choosing better for yourself is not wrong. Outgrowing people is part of becoming who you're meant to be. And yeah, it might leave you alone for a while. It might feel empty at first. It might feel like you lost something. But what you actually did was make space. Space for better. Space for real. Space for people who align with who you're becoming, not who you used to be. Because the truth is, it's better to stand alone with peace. Times you end Chinese what they say is wah. Chinese what they too deeply. You scroll, you talk, you laugh, you pass time. And before you know it, days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and nothing really changes. You're moving, but you're not progressing. You're alive, but you're not growing. Because growth requires focus, and focus doesn't live in chaos. It lives in stillness. It lives in those moments where there's nothing else to do, except face what needs to be done. A man surrounded by distractions will always find a way to delay his purpose. There's always something else, something easier, something more comfortable. I'll start tomorrow. I just need a little more time. I just need a little more time. I'm not. Kides. Or when the distractions are gone, assays what they ready yet. Or when the distractions are gone, those excuses start to sound different. They start to feel empty. Because now, there's nothing left to hide behind. It's just you and the truth. The truth about what you've been avoiding. The truth about the work you've been avoiding. The truth about the work you've been putting off. The truth about the potential you've been neglecting. And that truth, it hits hard because deep down you know what you're capable of. It hits hard because deep down you know what you're capable of. You know you could be doing more. You know you could be better. But distractions, they keep you comfortable with less. They give you an easy way out. They let you escape the pressure of becoming. But once that escape is gone, everything changes. You wake up with a different kind of awareness. You start noticing how you spend your time, how you use your energy, what you give your attention to. And slowly, you start making different choices. Not because someone told you to, but because you can't ignore it anymore. You start doing the things you've been avoiding. The hard, what time I taste, what tay things, the uncomfortable things, the things that require discipline. Because now, there's no other option. And at first, it feels heavy. It feels like pressure, like you're carrying more than you used to. But that's not pressure. That's responsibility. Responsibility for your own life, your own growth, your own future. And the more you lean into that, the stronger you become. You start building habits, not perfect ones, but consistent ones. You start showing up even when you don't feel like it. You start pushing through resistance instead of running from it. And little by little, something shifts. You begin to see progress. Small at first, almost unnoticeable, but real. And that's what keeps you going. Because when you experience real growth, you don't want to go back to distractions. You don't want to go back to wasting time. You don't want to go back to that version of yourself that kept delaying everything. Because now you've seen what you're capable of. You felt the You've experienced what it's like to move with purpose. And that feeling, it's addictive. Not the kind of addiction that weakens you up, but the kind that builds you, that pushes you to keep going, to keep improving, to keep becoming more. And suddenly, the things that used to entertain you don't hit the same. The conversations feel shallow. The habits feel empty. The distractions feel like a waste because you've outgrown them. Not because you're better than anyone, but because you've decided to be better for yourself. And that's where real growth lives. And that's where real growth lives. Not in comfort, not in noise, not in constant distraction, but in those quiet moments where you choose discipline over ease, where you choose purpose over comfort, where you choose growth even when it's hard. And most people, they never get there. Not because they can't, but because they never remove the distractions long enough to find out who they could become. There's something different about a man who had to figure, and Tamates and Taste text, what Tay things out on his own, no one guiding him, no one constantly checking on him. And Tommy West says Tommy Wednesday. And what Tay Fred, bye. Sometimes why, China's why, Tay, you look around and see people with their circles that back up their safety nets, and you start to wonder, why not me? Why do I have to do this alone? Wow. Someone to say, I got you on support. You want someone to say, I got you. But when that doesn't come, you're forced into something you didn't ask for. Independence. And independence isn't pretty in the beginning. It's messy. It's confusing. It's full of mistakes because you're learning everything the hard way. Every decision is on you. Every failure is yours to carry. Every failure is yours to carry. Every setback is yours to recover from. No one is coming to fix it. No one is coming to fix it. No one is coming. Kai, dapai, 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 dapai. What Chinese lete stay says what? Te. And that realization, it hits hard because it takes away the comfort of waiting for help, waiting for approval, waiting for the right moment. Because now there's only one option. Move. Even if you're not ready, even if you're scared, even if you don't have all the answers. You move because you have to. And slowly, something starts to build inside you. Not confidence right away, but resilience. The ability to take a hit and keep going, to fail and not fall apart, to struggle and still show up the next day. And that resilience starts to turn into something powerful. Because the more you rely on yourself, less you need from others. You stop looking for validation. You stop needing people to agree with your decisions. You stop waiting for someone to tell you you're doing the right thing. Because you've already learned how to trust yourself. And that trust, it changes everything. And that trust, it changes everything. You start making decisions with clarity. You start standing by your choices. You ask people, don't understand them. You start walking your own path without constantly looking around for approval. And yeah, it can feel lonely. Making moves on your own, carrying your own weight, handling your own problems. But at the same time, it feels empowering because you realize something most people never do. You realize that you are enough. Not perfect, not unstoppable, but capable of figuring things out, capable of adapting, capable of building something from nothing. And that belief, it's not loud. It's not something you show off. It's quiet. It sits deep inside you. And it shows up in the way you carry yourself, in the way you handle pressure, in the way you don't panic when things go wrong. Because you've been there before. You've faced worse. You've survived moments that should have broken you. And now, things don't shake you the same way. You don't fall apart over small problems. You don't lose yourself when things get difficult. You stay grounded, stick. You've built that foundation on your own. And that's what makes it unshakable. Because when your strength comes from other people, it can be taken away. But when it comes from within, nobody can touch it. Nobody can break it, touch it. Nobody can break it. Nobody can control it. And that's the power of self-reliance. It's not about shutting people out. It's not about thinking you don't need anyone. It's about knowing that even if nobody shows up, you still will. You still stand. You still fight. You still move forward. And that kind of strength, it doesn't come from comfort. It comes from those moments where you had no choice but to depend on yourself. Silence has a way of revealing things you've been trying not to hear. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, steady, unavoidable. At first, it feels uncomfortable. You reach for your phone. You look for something to distract yourself, anything to fill the space. Because that silence, it feels heavy, like it's trying to tell you something you're not ready to face. And they run from it. They keep themselves busy. They surround themselves with noise, people, entertainment. Because as long as there's noise, people, entertainment, because as long as there's noise, they don't have to listen. But when everything slows down, when the world gets quiet, that's when it starts. That voice inside you, say that's when it starts. That voice inside you, not the one shaped by others, not the one shaped by others, not the one influenced by opinions, but the real one, the honest one, the one that doesn't lie. And it starts asking questions, questions you've been avoiding, questions you've been too distracted to hear. What are you doing with your life? Why are you still in the same place? Why do you keep ignoring what you really want? Why are you still in the same place? Why do you keep ignoring what you really want? And those questions, they don't come with comfort. They come with pressure, because deep down you already know the answers. You just haven't been ready to admit them, because admitting them means change. It means letting go of what's familiar. It means stepping into something uncertain, and that's scary. So instead, you stay distracted. You stay distracted. You stay con. You stay in the same cycle. But silence, it doesn't go away. It waits. And when it finally catches up to you, it doesn't whisper anymore. It hits you with clarity, clear thoughts, clear realizations, clear truth. You start seeing things differently. The life you're living starts to feel off. The routines feel empty. The things that once made you comfortable don't hit the same, because now you're aware of your potential, aware of your direction, aware of the gap between where you are and where you know you should be. And that awareness, it changes everything. And that awareness, it changes everything, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't unsee it. You can try to ignore it. You can try to go back to distractions, but it won't feel the same anymore, because deep down, you know you meant for more. You know you've been holding back. You know you've been settling. And that knowing, it creates a tension inside you, a pressure that doesn't let you stay the same. And slowly, your focus begins to Chinese wade set te. You start valuing your time differently. You start protecting your energy. You start being more intentional with your choices. Not because someone told you to not because someone told you to, but because you heard something deeper, something real, something that came from within you. And that's your purpose trying to speak. Not in a loud voice, not in a clear plan, but in a feeling, a pull, a direction that keeps showing up in your thoughts, in your curiosity, in the things that keep calling your attention. And when you finally stop ignoring it, when you finally sit with it, that's when things start to align. You don't have all the answers. You don't have everything figured out, but you have clarity on what matters, on what doesn't, on what you need to do next. And sometimes that's all you need, just the next step, just the courage to move in the direction you feel. Because purpose isn't something you find in noise. It's not something people can hand to you. It's not something people can hand to you. It's something you discover when you're quiet, when you're honest enough to face yourself, when you're brave enough to follow what you feel, even if it doesn't make sense to others. And that silence, it becomes different. It's no longer heavy. It's no longer heavy. It's no longer uncomfortable. It becomes a space where you think clearly, where you reflect deeply, where you reflect deeply, where you reflect deeply, where you reconnect with yourself. And in that space, you start becoming someone who moves with intention, someone who understands their direction, someone who doesn't need constant noise to feel alive. There comes a point where you stop chasing people, not because you hate them, not because you hate them, not because you don't care, but because you don't care, but because you finally understand your value. You realize that forcing connections never leads to real ones. That trying to fit into places where you don't belong, that trying to fit into places where you don't belong only makes you feel smaller. So you step back. You stop reaching out as much. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop trying to prove your worth to people who were never paying attention in the con. And at first it feels strange. It feels like you're losing something. Like the world is getting quieter. Like people are fading away. And for a moment, you question it. Am I doing the right thing? Should I try harder? Should I go back to how things were? But deep down, you know that going back means going back to being overlooked, to being undervalued, to being in spaces where you had to shrink just to be accepted. And you're not that man anymore, because somewhere along the way you changed, you grew, you started seeing things clearly. You started recognizing your own worth, not because someone told you, but because you built it through struggle, through solitude, through moments where you had nothing but still kept going. And that kind of growth, it shifts your standards. You don't just let anyone into your space anymore. You don't just accept any kind of energy. You become selective, not out of ego, but out of self-respect. You start paying attention, to how people make you feel. Do they bring peace or stress? Do they support you or compete with you? Did they respect your time or waste it? And those answers, they matter now because you've learned how valuable your energy is. You've learned how much it costs to rebuild yourself, and you're not willing to lose that just to keep people around. So instead of chasing in, you start attracting, but here's the truth most people don't understand. Attraction doesn't happen because you want it to. It happens because of who you become. Because when you focus on yourself, when you build your life, when you grow in silence, you start carrying a different presence, a different energy. You walk differently. You speak differently. You move with purpose, and people notice that. Not because you're trying to impress them, but because it's real, and real always stands out. The right people, they feel it. They feel it. They recognize it. They connect with it. Not on a surface level, but on something deeper. Because, ask you for a text. They've been through their own journey too. They understand growth. They understand distance. They understand what it takes to become someone solid. And those are the people who start entering your life. Not all at once, not in big numbers, but in the right way, with respect, with understanding, with alignment. And suddenly, you don't feel the need to chase anymore. You don't feel the need to chase anymore. You don't feel the need to force conversations. You don't feel the need to prove yourself because everything flows naturally. And that's how you know it's real. Because real connections don't feel like effort. They don't feel like pressure. They don't feel like pressure. They don't feel like you have to be someone else. They feel calm. They feel right. They feel like you can just be yourself without fear. And that only happens when you've done the work on yourself first. When you've built a life that doesn't depend on others. When you've learned to stand alone without feeling incomplete. Because when you're complete on your own, you don't look for sticks. Ask you for a pipe to fill a void. You look for people who add value, who bring something meaningful into your life. And that changes everything. Because now your circle is not based on convenience. It's based on quality, on connection, on mutual growth. And even if that circle is small, it feels full. It feels full. It feels real. It feels like something worth protecting. Because you know what it took to get there. You know what it took to get there. You know the loneliness. You know the silence. You know the journey you had to walk alone just to become this version of yourself.